They said we were allies. For 6 years, we bled beside them, marched beside them, died beside them. Shoulder to shoulder, humans and Vexari, our so-called partners in the war against the Drylock swarms. We shared trenches, starships, and the hellish silence of space funerals. Some even married into their race, trusting them, thinking we'd finally found equals out in the stars. But then came the siege of Delcar 9. That's where it all shattered. I still remember the message. Cold, clinical, no room for mercy. Human forces deemed expendable. Vexari fleets withdrawing. Good luck. Good luck. That's what they told us as the Drylocks poured into the city like black fire. We had 23,000 boots on the ground. Infantry, engineers, medics, logistics, all left behind like meat in a grinder. No air support, no evac, no Vexari orbital artillery. They just left. I was a captain back then. Captain Riven Mace, 3rd Infantry, Terran Blade Corps. I watched my entire company get torn to shreds in the span of 12 hours. Screaming over comms, begging for cover fire. Men calling for their mothers. Some of them younger than my son, if I'd had one. You know what haunts me most? The silence after. Not the screams, not the explosions, not the Drylock war cries. It was the silence when the Vexari stopped responding to our hails. When even the static cut off, and we knew they weren't just leaving. They were abandoning us. Only 2,000 of us made it out. We fought through the ruined spires of Delcar 9, scavenging Drylock weaponry and stealing one of their siege crawlers just to punch through the blockade. We clawed our way into the stars like rabid dogs. And when we got back to Terran command, bruised and broken, they told us to stand down, said we couldn't jeopardize the alliance, that it was all a strategic miscommunication. Bullshit. So we went quiet, let the politicians lie, let the diplomats smile and shake hands, let the Vexari pretend nothing happened while they paraded around as Earth's friends. But we never forgot. We buried our dead. We trained harder. We started building something in secret. Project Ashlight, a quiet, off-the-books black cell hidden deep beneath the Arctic Circle. No media, no oversight. Just survivors, patriots, soldiers who still had fire in their veins. Men like me. Men who understood one simple truth. You don't betray humanity and walk away breathing. Ashlight grew. We recruited from the shadows, disavowed operatives, dishonorably discharged war heroes, lost boys with nothing left but a grudge. Some said we were terrorists. Maybe they were right. Maybe we were something worse. We called ourselves the Ghost Corps, and every single one of us had bled on Delcar 9. For 3 years, we watched, waited, studied their empire, their logistics, patrol routes, cultural choke points. We sabotaged their comms, infiltrated their AI relays, stole their fleet schematics right out from under their ambassador's nose. Then we struck. Small at first, isolated patrols, supply convoys, made it look like pirates. Vexari blamed the Draylocks, laughed it off. But that was just the foreplay. The real war started when we hijacked the Ravon Spire, their flagship carrier orbiting Norix Prime. Put the entire command crew out an airlock. Broadcast the footage across 12 systems. Left a message carved into the hull in plasma scorches. This is for Delcar 9. Suddenly, the Vexari weren't laughing anymore. They called us monsters. Good. We were. We've dismantled 4 of their outer colonies since then, cracked their crystal cities like bones. No survivors, no mercy. We take their tech, their weapons, their warships, and we send the rest to hell, and yet it's not enough. Not yet. Not until their emperor kneels in the ashes of his golden palace and begs to understand why we did this. And I'll tell him. I'll look that smug, lizard-eyed bastard right in the face and say, "You shouldn't have left us behind. The Vexari called us ferals now, beasts in stolen armor. They whispered about us in their courts like we were a plague they couldn't track. We weren't ghosts anymore. We were a damn infection, bleeding through the cracks of their perfect little empire. And we liked it that way. After the Ravon Spire op, things moved faster. No more shadows. No more pretending. The Ghost Corps had become a myth, a legend, a problem the Vexari couldn't explain to their people without admitting the truth, that they had betrayed their allies, and now the allies were dismantling them piece by piece. We didn't hit military targets exclusively. We went surgical. Economic nexuses, cultural monuments, supply relays. We made sure every strike wasn't just physical, it was emotional, symbolic. You destroy a Vexari crystal nexus on Azar 12? That's logistics gone. You reduce the Shrine of Unity to dust? That's a billion citizens watching their identity shatter. We became the monsters they created, and I became something worse. I remember the day I saw him again. Commander Sarek Dan, tall bastard, angular face, voice like a priest but eyes like a politician. He was Vexari High Fleet Liaison during the Delcar 9 operation, the one who gave the stand-down order and vanished when the swarm came. He was at a gala on Virex Station. Diplomatic bullshit. Red wine, music, humans smiling in tuxes as if they didn't smell the blood under the marble floor. I walked in wearing a stolen officer's coat. No mask, no helmet, just my scarred face and cold eyes. Took a glass of whatever they were drinking. Tasted like rotting fruit and metal. I walked right up to Sarek. He blinked once. Recognition flickered, then terror. The kind you can't fake. "Captain Mace," he stammered, voice low. "You're supposed to be dead?" I offered. "Yeah, most of us are." "Listen, I didn't have a choice." I grabbed his wrist gently. "Firm, you had a choice. You made the one that got my men butchered. Now you're going to pay for it." No, you don't understand." I turned the blade in my glove. Thin vibro shard. Silent. Slid it between his ribs before he finished the sentence. He slumped, eyes wide. Gurgling. "Tell your gods I'm coming," I whispered. We left him propped on the statue of interstellar unity, with a note pinned to his chest. He was the first. The rest of you are next. After that, every Vexari diplomat on Earth left within 72 hours. The charade was over. But it wasn't just about vengeance, not anymore. We were changing. The Ghost Corps was evolving into something bigger, something colder. And not all of us were handling it the same way. Take Wyatt Rell, for example. Big guy. Used to be Armor Division. Built like a walking tank. He was a friend. One of the few I'd still bleed for. He'd pulled me out of a burning wreckage back on Delcar 9 when I was too concussed to stand. Saved my life. But war had warped him. Turned his fury into something he couldn't contain. One night, after a raid on the Vexari outpost on Juno's Rings, he dragged out a captured officer. Young, maybe a cadet, barely past his teens in Vexari years. The kid was crying, pleading in that clicking, broken Terran tongue they used when they were scared. Wyatt grabbed a plasma torch. "I'm making him remember," he said through clenched teeth. "No," I said flatly. "We're not them." "He's one of them," Wyatt roared. "Don't you remember the screams?" I did. Every night. But we weren't doing this to become monsters. We were doing this because monsters left us no choice. If we crossed that line, we'd never come back. I raised my weapon. "Drop the torch, Wyatt." He looked at me for a long time. Then, finally, he let it clatter to the deck. The Vexari cadet was released. Stripped, dumped on a shuttle with a tracker and a message. This time, we showed mercy. Don't expect it again. The Empire started fracturing after that. Not visibly, not to the public, but underneath? Cracks were forming. We intercepted internal comms, whispers of dissent, governors going rogue, outposts refusing orders. Some Vexari soldiers started deserting their posts, fleeing instead of fighting. They knew what we were, what we'd become. We weren't just a threat, we were a prophecy. That's when they made contact. A splinter group of Vexari, traitors to their own kind. They called themselves the Severed. They'd lost family on Delcar 9 too, not to Drylocks but to the Empire's decisions. Officers who knew the betrayal was coming and said nothing. They reached out in the dark, broadcasting a signal only a human would catch. We want in. At first we thought it was a trap. I mean, it stank of it, but after 3 weeks of surveillance and 2 ambushed meetups, they finally proved their loyalty. They gave us coordinates, high-level Vexari War Council, secret gathering, supposed to be untraceable. We hit it with everything we had. That night, the sky over Yavern Kar turned red. The Council Dome exploded in a fireball that could be seen from orbit. 14 command-level officials died screaming. The Severed stood with us on that battlefield. They weren't friends, not yet. But they bled beside us. And in war, sometimes that's all it takes. Some of our men hated them, wouldn't even fight in the same room. Me? I didn't trust them, but I used them. That was enough. And yet, as the war dragged on, I started noticing something else. Something worse. We were winning, and it felt empty. I'd pictured it for years, burning their empire, bringing their leaders to their knees, carving names into steel in memory of my fallen men. But every time another colony fell, every time another fleet shattered under our guns, the victory felt smaller. Because they were starting to surrender. Because some of them started apologizing. And I didn't know what to do with that. You prepare your whole life to avenge the dead, to unleash hell. But no one tells you what to do when your enemy finally looks you in the eye and says, "We were wrong." It made the rage unstable. And unstable rage? That's dangerous in people like us. One night, I was alone on the deck of the Black Maw, our command cruiser built from salvaged wreckage and stolen parts. I stared at the stars. Those cold, beautiful liars. They'd watched it all. And they'd do it again. No judgment, no justice. Just silence. I poured a glass of Kevin whiskey. Real stuff. Took years to find a bottle untouched by Vexari tariffs. That's when Silas found me. He was my second. Lean, sharp-eyed. Had that constant predator's stillness, like he could snap a neck or vanish into shadows in the same breath. He spoke low, always. "They're offering a summit." I turned, glass in hand. "What?" "The Vexari High Crown, official, want to negotiate." I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "Negotiate what? How they die?" "They're losing, Mace. Fast. We've collapsed 7 trade arcs, 2 homeworlds in quarantine. Civil unrests spreading faster than plague." "Good." He stepped closer. "Not just surrender. Reparations. A tribunal. Public broadcast of the betrayal at Delcar 9. They'll confess to the galaxy." I stared at him. "You believe them?" "No," he said. "But I believe they're scared." I nodded slowly, then crushed the glass in my hand. Blood dripped down my wrist. Didn't flinch. "Tell them we'll attend. On one condition." "What?" I looked him dead in the eye. "They bring the one who signed the Delcar recall order. I want his name, his face. I want him in front of me, alive." Silas nodded. Didn't argue. He knew better. Because in that moment, with the blood drying on my palm, I realized something. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe this was about sending a message, not just to the Vexari, but to every race out there watching from the shadows. You don't betray humanity. Not in war, not in peace, not ever. Because when you do, we don't forgive. We don't forget. We burn it all down. The summit was set for Kelvar Theta, a neutral station wedged in dead space between the Vexari core systems and former Terran colonies. It used to be a mining hub, stripped to its bones years ago. Now it was just metal and memory. Dead halls with flickering lights and gravity that hiccuped every few hours. Perfect place for ghosts to meet the liars who made them. I brought 20 men with me. Not the quiet types. These were my hammerheads, grizzled, jagged-edged killers with blood under their fingernails and the kind of loyalty forged in fire. Men who'd seen Delcar 9 and lived with the guilt of surviving it. Silas was with me, silent as ever, though his eyes had that tension, like a wolf waiting for a reason to bite. The Vexari came in light. No weapons, no guards, at least not visibly. Just 5 delegates wrapped in those shimmering blue robes, high collar and smug. One of them was an old face, Ambassador Kirill, who used to visit Earth during the peace era, smiling like he'd never pulled a string to drop a bomb. He offered a gesture of greeting. I didn't return it. We met in the central chamber, glass dome above us showing the swirl of distant stars. There was something poetic about standing beneath the same void that had once held our dying men and pretending for a second that diplomacy still meant something. The Vexari bowed in their strange, twitchy way. I didn't move. Then the bastard finally stepped forward. "Captain Mace, you have our gratitude for attending—" I cut him off. "Where is he?" He blinked, hesitated. "Where is the one who signed the withdrawal at Delcar 9? I repeated. Silence. Then, slowly, one of them, taller, thinner, yellow-veined beneath the skin, stepped forward. His robe bore the insignia of a high fleet strategist. General Torran Zeal. The name alone made my jaw tighten. He didn't look like much. Older, softer, but his eyes, those eyes were cold. Not afraid. Calculating. "I issued the recall," he said plainly, "and you watched 23,000 human soldiers get slaughtered without blinking," I replied. He didn't flinch. It was a strategic necessity. Had we remained, Vexari losses would have escalated by 67%. The Drylocks would have gained orbital superiority and flanked the... I walked across the floor and punched him. Not with fury, not with rage, just surgical precision. He dropped like a sack of wet meat. One of the other delegates stepped forward, hand raised. Silas had his pistol to the alien's forehead before the Vexari even moved a muscle. "Stay down," he said calmly. Torran spat blood. "You prove only that humans are emotional, impulsive. This is why alliances crumble." I crouched beside him. "You call it emotion. I call it remembering the names of every man I watched bleed out on Delcar 9 while you ran. You want to lecture me on strategy? Tell that to the corpses." He laughed, and something in me nearly snapped. But I didn't kill him, not yet. Instead, I stood, looked to the rest of the room. "Let's be honest here. This summit's not about reparations or truth. It's about control. You've lost your grip. Your colonies are rebelling. Your fleets are cracking. You're bleeding influence. You're scared." "They didn't deny it," I continued. "You want to stop the bleeding. You want us to take your apology, pretend it was a mistake, and help you rebuild." I stepped closer. "But we're not here to rebuild your empire. We're here to make sure it never rises again." That night, we took Torran Zeal with us, bound, hooded, thrown into a cell aboard the Black Maw. He didn't protest, didn't beg. He just sat in silence, occasionally muttering equations to himself like it would make the blood on his hands disappear. Silas sat across from me in the command chamber, arms folded. "What now?" he asked. "Tribunal," I said. Public. Broadcast to every system. We show them his face. We make him confess. He won't break. He doesn't have to, I said. We already have the files. Transcripts, orders, comms logs. But seeing his face when the truth's read out loud? That matters. Silas nodded. Then quietly. What if they don't care? That stopped me. He leaned forward. What if the people out there, the Vexari civilians, the neutral colonies, even some humans, what if they see the footage and still say, it was war? People die? I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew he was right. We lived in the blood. We remembered the screams. But the galaxy? The galaxy moved on. It always did. You give them enough time, and even genocide becomes a footnote. We aired the tribunal 3 days later. Zale strapped to a chair. Shackled, thin light on his face. The screen behind him showed images from Delcar 9, photos we'd taken, footage scraped from battlefield drones, burning cities, crushed helmets, human soldiers clawing at medfoam packs while drylocks tore through the streets. I read the orders out loud. Zale never denied them. He didn't apologize. He simply said, it was necessary. The broadcast reached over 30 systems. Billions saw it. And reactions were mixed. Some Vexari wept, protested in their cities, holding signs with human names they'd learned in guilt. Others doubled down, claimed we were terrorists manipulating footage, that Delcar 9 was a battlefield and human casualties were a tragic necessity. Some humans sympathized, others demanded more blood. The lines blurred again, and I hated how numb it made me feel. A week passed. The Severed sent us new intelligence, coordinates of a Vexari thought vault, deep intel storage, not just war files, cultural archives, philosophy backups, species memory nodes, their soul. Destroying it wouldn't just hurt them, it would erase who they were. Silas handed me the data chip. It's real, confirmed. One hit, and they lose 1,000 years of history. I stared at it. The logical part of me knew what had to be done. Strategically, it was the killing blow. But there was something in my chest. A whisper of the man I used to be. The one who'd signed up to serve, not to slaughter. I need time, I said. Silas frowned. You going soft? No, I said. I just want to make sure we're still fighting them, not becoming them. He didn't argue, just left the chip on the table and walked away. That night, I found myself in the old chapel of the Black Maw. Bare walls, no symbols, just silence. Wyatt was there, sitting in the corner, cleaning his rifle. He looked up. You look like a man who's starting to wonder if revenge is worth it. I sat down across from him. I thought wiping out their empire would bring closure. Thought I'd feel lighter. He smirked. That's the lie, Mace. You don't get lighter. You just carry the weight better. I nodded slowly. But when do we stop? He shrugged. When there's no one left to kill. We sat in silence. And I realized something brutal, something I hadn't admitted even to myself. We weren't just punishing the Vexari anymore. We were punishing the galaxy for letting it happen. And deep down, we were punishing ourselves for surviving. The next morning, I gathered the Ghost Corps leadership, held up the chip. This is their memory vault. If we strike it, they lose their legacy. Silence. I need to know, honestly. Do we do it? Or is this where we draw the line? Wyatt was the first to speak. After what they did, erase it. Another nodded. Make them feel the weight of every human we buried. But Silas? He looked at me with something different in his eyes. If we do this, he said, we stop being the victims. We become the architects of extinction. Are you ready for that, Mace? I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know. The room stayed silent long after Silas spoke. You could hear the humming of the Maw's engines through the floor. Even Wyatt, all brute and thunder, didn't jump to talk this time. The chip on the table glinted in the low light, innocent and deadly, a shard of vengeance wrapped in data. I stood up, slowly, looked around at the men who'd followed me through hell. Some had lost limbs, others had lost wives, a few had lost everything except the mission, the one we promised each other on Delcar 9, make them pay. But there was something different in the air now. Not fear, not weakness. Something more dangerous. Doubt. You all know what that chip means, I said, voice low. That vault isn't just files. It's their language roots, their art, their birth records, their gods, their shame, their victories, their entire identity as a people. Silas watched me. Wyatt stared at the table. The others stayed still. They destroyed our brothers. They left us to die. They earned every bullet we've fired since. But this isn't killing soldiers. This isn't breaking their fleets. This is annihilation. Wyatt finally spoke, voice thick. Good. Let them vanish. Let the galaxy forget they ever existed. They won't forget, Silas said quieter. They'll remember the ones who erased them. That'll be our legacy. And what? Wyatt snapped. We play nice now? After what they did to us? After we dug men out of rubble with our hands, screamed for medevac that never came, watched friends eaten alive by drylock claws because those scaly bastards ran? His voice cracked. First time I'd ever heard it. I understood him. Every man in that room did. But that's the problem with revenge. Once you taste it, it keeps asking for more. We're soldiers, I said finally, not erasers. A few of them nodded. Barely, but it was enough. I made the call. We don't destroy the vault. Not because they deserved mercy, but because we did. The Ghost Corps had a satellite base orbiting Kreven 8, a converted refinery turned ops hub. We used it to coordinate logistics, patch wounded, store stolen tech. It wasn't armed like the Maw, wasn't supposed to need to be. That morning, at 0400 station time, a Vexari fleet descended without warning. No broadcast, no negotiations. They just opened fire. By the time the Maw arrived, Kreven 8 was gone. Just twisted metal, frozen bodies, and the echo of screams on emergency loops. We found 92 corpses, engineers, medics, communications staff. And one of them was Dev, our youngest recruit. Barely 20, joined because his brother died on Delcar 9, and he had no one left. I personally pulled what was left of his body from the debris. His helmet had melted to his skull. I didn't cry. None of us did. But that chip, the one I spared, I almost crushed it with my bare hands. They'll never change, Wyatt said that night. You spared their soul, and they spat in your face. He wasn't wrong. Even Silas didn't defend them this time. He just stared at the empty chair where Dev used to sit during mission briefs. Orders? He finally asked. I didn't hesitate this time. We go after the ones who authorized the Kreven strike. Full blackout op. No prisoners. He nodded once. No one asked what came after that. We traced the order to a sub-faction inside the Vexari military, calling themselves the Council of Renewal, an extremist group pushing for full Vexari supremacy after our recent victories. They believed mercy made them weak, that allowing humans to live was a mistake they were now correcting. We found their base on Zakar 4, a fortress world beneath molten skies, housed deep inside a planetary fissure, shielded by ion storms, powered by geothermal reactors. Unbreachable, according to Vexari records. But we'd breached worse. Operation Grave Voice was born. We launched 2 decoy attacks on outer systems to draw their fleets away, then inserted a 5-man squad through a stolen mining rig that tunneled straight into the crust of Zakar 4. Weeks of planning, hours of silence. When we finally reached their core command, we didn't knock. We slaughtered them. They never saw us coming. I put 2 rounds into their command director's skull while he begged in broken Terran, crying about how it wasn't personal. I shot him again, just to make sure. When it was over, 36 Vexari officers lay dead. Their databanks burned, their systems fried. Message received. But even victory felt wrong now. Because they hit us again. This time it wasn't a base or a ship. It was Earth. Not a direct attack. No bombs, no troops. Propaganda. The Vexari sent out footage of the Grave Voice raid, but edited. Twisted. Made it look like we butchered civilians, children, medics. And some people believed it. On Earth's media nets, the Ghost Corps was labeled a rogue faction. Terrorists, war criminals. There were calls for reconciliation, for investigations, even for extradition. I stood on the bridge of the Maw, watching the headlines scroll. Captain Mace responds to civilian massacre allegations. UN Peace Council demands Ghost Corps disarmament. Former allies now enemies, the human cost of vengeance. It was laughable. No one on Earth ever saw Delcar 9. They just saw their clean cities, their polished news anchors, their soft morality. They wanted peace. But peace was never an option for us. Because peace died in the trenches, bleeding out while friends screamed through static. I gathered the crew that night. Earth's abandoned us, I said. They've forgotten. Wyatt shook his head. Let them rot. But Silas looked up, cold fire in his voice. Number we remind them. I raised an eyebrow. How? We show them Delcar 9, all of it, the uncut footage, the orders, the bodies. Make it public, make it hurt. Broadcast it? No, he said. We bury it in their networks, force every screen on Earth to play it, every terminal, every school, every home. Make them watch the betrayal, let them choke on it. It was extreme. It was dangerous. It was perfect. We launched the operation 2 days later. A virus buried in humanitarian comms. Masked in relief data. Spread across 36 relay satellites. At exactly 0700 Terran time, every screen on Earth went black, then bled red. It played the raw footage, helmet cams, med logs, screams, fires, faces. Then came the Vexari order, the actual message. Human forces deemed expendable, Vexari fleets withdrawing, good luck. No music, no voiceover, just the truth. And then the message. This is who you want peace with. The aftermath was nuclear. Riots broke out across human cities. Protests flooded the networks. The UN Council fractured. Military leaders resigned. News anchors cried on live feeds. And for the first time in years, Earth remembered. But so did the Vexari. Because the leak didn't just hit human networks. It spread into theirs, too. Their civilians saw what their leaders had done. Some were horrified. Others called us liars. But a fracture split wide down the center of their society. We didn't just win a battle. We reshaped the war. And yet, I felt nothing. Because every time we gained ground, we lost something inside us. We didn't laugh anymore. We didn't rest. We didn't hope. We just existed, fueled by anger, powered by ghosts. Silas said it best one night. "We're not alive, Riven. We're just revenge-wearing skin." He wasn't wrong, and I had no idea what came next. Because even if we destroyed their empire, even if we brought every last traitor to their knees, what would be left of us when it was over? There's a moment in every war when you realize you're not the same person who walked into it. For me, it came in the silence after the Earth broadcast. We'd spent years clawing, killing, burning, and in one move, we turned the galaxy's attention back on us. Not just as soldiers, but as something closer to gods of fire and memory. The footage had burned through every planetary net, every orbital comms channel, every school, home, and station. Earth remembered. The Vexari remembered. And yet here we were, adrift, bloody, and no closer to peace than we'd been the day we crawled out of Delcar 9's ruins. Silas stood beside me in the control chamber, eyes on the data stream. Protests in the Karani Belt. 3 colonies demanding Vexari withdrawals. "Good," I said. "Earth's split. Half demanding we be pardoned, half want us on trial." Typical. And Vexari command, well, they're offering a ceasefire. That stopped me. "A ceasefire?" He nodded. "Public, no tricks. They want to talk again." I scoffed. After Kreven 8? They're bleeding. The people are turning on them. They're desperate. Wyatt entered just then, his boots heavy on the deck, face like carved stone. "Tell me we're not entertaining that garbage," he growled. "We should hear them," Silas said evenly. "They want peace now because we've got their balls in a fire pit. If we stop, they'll rebuild. You know it." I didn't speak. Because both of them were right. The Vexari leadership had broken, but they weren't finished. Not truly. Empires don't die in treaties. They die when no one remembers their name. And even then, sometimes the bones still whisper. But something had shifted inside me since the Vault decision. I didn't say it out loud, not yet. But the fire that used to roar in my chest? It had turned to coals. Still hot, still deadly, but quieter. I wasn't sure if that was clarity, or just the start of burnout. The ceasefire meeting was held on Shalar Prime, a cold, oceanic planet no one had ever cared much about before. Neutral zone. Under the watch of the Orion Accord, some leftover interstellar peacekeeping shell that had no power, but liked to play mediator. We didn't send many this time, just me, Silas, and a 3-man escort. The Vexari sent 10. They were afraid. Good. Fear meant leverage. Their leader was someone new, High Matriarch Zelra, one of the first female Vexari to rise to political prominence. Rumor was she'd nearly been executed during the first year of the Ghost Corps campaign for suggesting surrender. Now she wore it like a crown. She greeted me with folded arms. No smile. "Captain Mace," she said in their gravelly accent. "I thought you'd be taller." "I thought you'd be dead," I replied. She didn't flinch. "I want this to end," she said. I stared at her. "You mean your losses? You want those to end?" She nodded. "That too. But I also want your kind to stop hating ours for a crime committed by cowards long buried." "You don't bury cowards," I said. "You drag them out and make sure they rot in the light." Silas stepped forward, placing a data stick on the table. "This has the list. Everyone who signed off on the Delcar withdrawal, everyone who protected them afterward, and everyone who authorized the Kreven strike." Zelra looked at it without touching it. "What do you want?" I leaned forward. "Give them to us." She didn't blink. That would mean handing over members of my current war council. "Then you'd better start recruiting replacements." Her jaw twitched. Silas added, "This isn't diplomacy. This is closure." They stalled for 2 days, tried to barter names, offered alternative punishments, public trials, ceremonial dishonor, exile. Wyatt almost pulled his knife out during one meeting. Only Silas's hand on his shoulder kept him from gutting their envoy in the middle of a negotiation. But on the 3rd day, they caved. 10 names, 10 officials, delivered into our custody. And the rest? Zelra insisted they were either dead or irrelevant. We didn't believe her, but we took the 10. Back on the Black Maw, we didn't torture them. We didn't parade them. We simply opened a live stream and made them confess. One by one, they admitted it. The recall, the betrayal, the cover-ups, the propaganda. No lies, no dodging. Every sentence broadcast across every Vexari and Terran channel, translated into 70 languages. Some begged forgiveness, some cried, a few stayed cold to the end. We executed them after. No fanfare, just a bullet, a body, an open airlock. And just like that, the war changed again. The ceasefire became something more. The Vexari signed a treaty with Earth. Reparations, demilitarization, shared control over neutral systems. Ghost Corps would remain separate, unrecognized but untouchable. We became legends, and ghosts once more. But peace? That's a myth people sell to make dying seem like it had a purpose. Because 6 weeks later, I sat alone in the Maw's war room, watching the news feed roll. Earth refuses Ghost Corps integration. Senators call for disarmament of private militias. Human Unity Corps labels Ghost Corps a security risk. Wyatt barged in mid-scroll, fury in his eyes. "They're coming for us." I looked up. "Who?" "Earth. Our own damn people. The new UN task force? They just seized one of our outposts near Halvan Ridge. No warning. Just stormed in, arrested our men." Silas entered behind him. Slower, more calculated. "They're afraid of us, Riven. We're not a weapon anymore. We're a threat." "They begged us to fight this war," Wyatt barked. "We buried their enemies, and now they want to erase us like we're some embarrassment?" I didn't reply, because I already knew the answer. We were a reminder of what Earth wanted to forget, of what it cost to survive. A week later, the Maw was under siege, not by Vexari, by Terran vessels. Human voices crackled over the comms, demanding surrender, calling us unauthorized military force, calling us dangerous, unstable. I stared at the screen, saw the flag of Earth again, and realized we weren't at war with aliens anymore. We were at war with the very world we bled for, and that's when I understood. This war would never end, because it was never just about species, or betrayal, or borders. It was about memory, about guilt. The Vexari betrayed us, and we made them remember. But Earth? They let it happen. They looked the other way when the bodies burned. And now that the war was over, they wanted to silence the ghosts. But we weren't going to let them. I turned to Silas and Wyatt. "No retreat," I said. "No surrender." Silas nodded. Wyatt grinned like death itself. We manned the guns, the Maw roared, and the war began again. Not against monsters, not against aliens, but against the lie that survival can ever come without consequence. The first Terran ship that opened fire on us was called the Vigilant Mercy. Irony, I guess. It came in fast, sleek and polished, carrying Earth's new peacekeeping badge like some kind of holy symbol. We scanned it before it fired. We could have destroyed it right then. Should have. But I held the order. And then they opened up on the Black Maw's starboard flank. Precision strikes, not meant to kill, just disable. Subtle message. We could kill you, but we're giving you a chance to behave. Silas leaned beside me at the command console, hands still. Wyatt was already strapping into the weapons station, eyes burning. "Say the word, Mace," he growled. "We blow that virtue-painted bastard out of the sky." But I waited. Not out of mercy, out of disbelief. I stared at the signature on the screen. Earth Fleet, authorized, cleared by the Unified Peace Council. They'd sent their own to silence us. They were hoping we'd surrender. They thought we were tired. They thought we'd gone soft. I looked at Silas. "Arm the torpedoes." He didn't blink, just obeyed. And as the hum of weapons charging filled the deck, I realized something that made my stomach go hollow. This was always going to happen. We weren't heroes, not to them. We were tools, useful in war, disposable in peace. The torpedoes struck Vigilant Mercy dead on. We didn't aim to kill the crew, just split the hull enough to get our message across. Their comms shut off mid-command. Lights dimmed. Power gone. We watched escape pods fire out seconds later. I let them float. I wanted them to live. I wanted them to remember. Because now we weren't just soldiers anymore. We were rebels. Over the next 3 weeks, Earth Fleet launched 6 offensives against us. They hit outposts we'd built from scratch. Places where broken men had learned to breathe again. Took prisoners. Seized weapons. Sent out PR blasts calling us radical ex-military insurgents. The worst came when they stormed Arkan's Hollow, our medical base in orbit around a dying moon. They didn't even announce their approach. Just breached, cuffed every medic, dragged wounded men from their beds, and left the place ransacked. And when we tried to retrieve our people, they broadcast the whole thing as if we were the terrorists. A nurse named Ilya was shot during the raid. No warning, just a twitchy Earth Fleet kid who thought she was reaching for a weapon. She bled out in Silas's arms. He didn't speak for 2 days after that. Wyatt nearly launched an orbital strike in retaliation. I stopped him. Barely. I told myself I was preserving control, but the truth was, I didn't know where control ended and fury began anymore. The breaking point came when Earth's president, Councillor Rendell, announced full mobilization against the Ghost Corps. The broadcast played across every neutral system. These men and women, once brave defenders of Earth, have become enemies of peace. We honor their past, but we cannot tolerate their present. Ghost Corps is hereby declared a hostile rogue force. All member states are advised to detain and disarm upon encounter. They even had the gall to end the speech with, "May history judge us kindly." Wyatt punched the screen. Silas didn't even flinch. "They want history?" I said aloud. "Then we'll give them something they'll never forget." The next operation wasn't defensive. It was surgical. We hit Harmony Point, Earth Fleet's central data nexus orbiting Mars. Not for weapons, not for revenge, for records. Silas and his infiltration team went in silent, masked, cloaked, no casualties unless necessary. And what we pulled from their servers? It burned. We found it all. Internal comms from the Delcar era. Earth officials knew about the Vexari betrayal. They saw the withdrawal order days before the slaughter began. And they let it happen. Because risking a diplomatic collapse was more dangerous than 23,000 dead soldiers. Because Earth didn't want to upset its shiny alliance. Because we were expendable. We leaked the files immediately, dumped everything into the interstellar web. Data chains, news nets, even sent direct files to major colony leaders. People screamed. Riots erupted on Earth. Flags burned. Monuments crumbled. And suddenly, the Ghost Corps wasn't the enemy anymore. We were the only ones telling the truth. But even truth has limits. Because Earth Fleet didn't slow down. They doubled their forces. They branded the files as fakes, claimed AI manipulation, declared emergency media lockdowns. They weren't after justice anymore. They were after erasure. We realized it in full when they activated Operation Morning Tide. a planetary-level drone assault protocol meant for alien invasions. They used it on us. Thousands of synthetic hunter drones launched from black sites, programmed to target Ghost Corps insignias, implants, genetic flags. They didn't take prisoners. They weren't built for that. They were built to cleanse. Our outposts went dark. One by one, units stopped responding. Men we trained, ate with, bled with, gone, burned in the silence of space. I watched as the death toll rose, and for the first time since Delcar 9, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel. Fear. Not fear of dying. Fear that they might succeed. Fear that our story, the truth, might vanish under their boots. Silas came to me late that cycle. His face was pale, unshaven, hands trembling. They hit Bastion Red. That was our fallback site, the one we never talked about, the last home for our oldest soldiers, the ones too wounded to fight, too broken to leave behind. All gone. Just gone. That night, Wyatt finally snapped. He stormed into the bridge, red-eyed, teeth gritted. "Let's hit Earth," he growled. "Wyatt! No more waiting, no more defending. We take the fight to their cities, their power grids, their damn council chambers." I shook my head. "That's not who we are." He laughed, a hollow, bitter thing. "Who we are? Mace, we're relics. Earth doesn't care about truth. They care about control. We're not soldiers anymore. We're a virus they're trying to cut out." "Maybe," I said. "But we don't kill civilians. That's the line." "There's no line left," he snarled. He walked out before I could answer. And in that moment, I knew I'd lost him. Not just Wyatt. I was losing the Ghost Corps. The next day, 2 of our own ships went rogue. They hit a Terran diplomatic transport on its way to Europa. No survivors, no mercy, no orders. I called for a command meeting. Only a third showed up. The others? Gone silent. Gone feral, or worse, gone full Wyatt. The Ghost Corps wasn't an army anymore. It was splintering. Silas stood across from me in the war room, arms crossed. "We can't stop it," he said. "Maybe not," I admitted. "But we can finish it." He raised a brow. I turned to the main terminal and opened the one file we'd never touched. Project Exodus. It wasn't a weapon. It was a confession, a complete digital archive of the Ghost Corps. Every raid, every death, every name, every betrayal, every sacrifice, every line we held, and every line we crossed. We'd been building it for years, in secret. Not as leverage, but as truth. "Leak it all," I said. "Even the ugly parts?" "Especially the ugly parts." He didn't argue, because he knew what I knew. We weren't going to win. But we could make damn sure the world never forgot what it cost to betray its own. The leak dropped 4 hours later. The galaxy lit up. And Earth Fleet declared open war. The leak didn't buy us time. It bought us fire. Within hours of Project Exodus going live, Earth Fleet locked down every major communications relay within the Sol system. Mars went dark. Luna cut its nets. Earth declared martial law in every territory sympathetic to us. They labeled the leak seditious propaganda, claimed the files were deep forged by rogue AIs and known insurgent groups. They even tried to pin the atrocities of Delcar 9 on us, claiming we'd doctored Vexari communications to frame Earth for the betrayal. That was when I realized it wasn't about truth anymore. It was about narrative. They were rewriting history in real time, and we were the last thing standing in their way. Silas paced behind me in the war room of the Black Maw, eyes sunk deep into his skull. He hadn't slept in days. None of us had. "We've got splinters forming on 7 fronts," he muttered. "Wyatt's people took control of Outpost Vale. 2 more commanders pledged loyalty to him this morning." "Who?" "Delmar and Trex." I clenched my jaw. Delmar had been one of mine. I'd pulled him out of a drylock meat nest myself. He'd bled on my uniform. I'd watched him cry the night we lost Arkan's Hollow. Now he was siding with Wyatt? We were losing the Ghost Corps. Not to Earthfleet. Not to the Vexari. To ourselves. "What's Wyatt's angle?" I asked, though I already knew. Silas looked up, voice bitter. "He wants to hit Earth. Full-scale strike. Civilian infrastructure included. He's lost. He thinks we're the ones who've lost." That stung. Because deep down, a part of me wondered if Wyatt was right. That night, I reviewed the logs from the last week. 13 raids conducted by rogue corps units. 3 civilian casualties. 2 human cities struck. It was spiraling. We were becoming the thing we fought to destroy. Silas entered without knocking. He stood there for a long time before speaking. I found him. "Wyatt?" He nodded. "He's rallying on Sindor Station. Brought half the outer core with him. Claims it's the new command hub. Fleet. 10 ships, maybe more. And he's building an EMP torpedo. Says when it hits Earth's upper grid, they'll have no choice but to beg for negotiation." I stared at him. "And if they don't?" Silas didn't answer. He didn't need to. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in my quarters. The light off, the walls humming. Delcar 9 flashed in my head again. Not the screams this time, just the quiet after the gunfire. That horrible, sterile silence when everything's dead and the wind stops moving. I remembered the smell of melting armor, the weight of my rifle, the voice of a medic whispering his own name over and over because he'd forgotten where he was. I remembered Wyatt then, kneeling beside a fallen rookie, swearing to make the bastards pay. We'd promised the dead we'd never let them be forgotten. But now we were about to become butchers in their name. We arrived at Sindor Station 3 days later. No announcements, no preamble. We dropped out of FTL and found the rogue fleet anchored around the old mining hub like wolves circling a corpse. Silas ran scans. 10 cruisers, 4 corvettes, 2 stealth frigates, all Ghost Corps tags, but patched, custom identifiers. "They've broken from command," I said. "They've built their own." We tried to hail them. Got static. Then Wyatt came on screen. He looked older, harder. The scar on his temple had widened since I'd last seen him. And his voice? Flat. Controlled. Like a man who'd finally accepted that hell was his home. "Mace. Wyatt. You shouldn't have come. I'm here to stop you." "You already did that when you let Earth get away with it." I leaned closer to the console. "This isn't justice. You're going to kill people who had nothing to do with Delcar. And Earth'll finally feel a fraction of what we felt," he snapped. "They made us into monsters. Let's stop pretending we're still men. Don't make me kill you. You're not that man anymore, Riven." He cut the line. Alarms screamed seconds later. They were arming weapons. The first volley came from their corvettes. We took evasive maneuvers. Shields absorbed most of the damage, but the Maw wasn't built for fleet combat. She was a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Silas barked orders to engineering. Our crew scrambled. "Return fire on the port flanks," I shouted. "Target their propulsion arrays. We disable, not destroy." "Riven," Silas said through grit teeth. "If we don't go lethal, we won't win." I shook my head. "We're not killing our own." "But they're not us anymore." I said no lethal. He nodded, but I saw it in his face. He wasn't sure I was right. And maybe he was right not to be. We danced for 30 minutes through fire. Disabled 3 cruisers, forced 2 to retreat. But then came the EMP torpedo. They launched it toward Earth's relay node, still 100,000 kilometers from planetary orbit, but close enough to bring down the entire comms grid for hours. Long enough to make the world panic. Long enough to make Earth look up and see terror coming. And that's when I gave the order I'd sworn I'd never give. Target Cinder Station. Reactor core. Lethal payload. Silas hesitated. I looked at him and said the words that broke something in me. They chose this. The Maw's primary cannon lit up. The payload screamed, and then Cinder Station bloomed into silent flame. There were no screams, no transmissions, just data. 73 dead, 44 missing, and among the confirmed killed. Wyatt. I sat alone afterward. Didn't speak for hours, didn't eat, didn't move, just stared at the file in my hand. Wyatt's final transmission. He'd recorded it before the launch. Probably knew I'd come. I played it. His voice was quieter, sadder. If you're hearing this, you won, Riven. Congrats. You stayed the better man. Maybe that matters. Maybe not. But if you ever ask yourself why I did what I did, it wasn't just for the dead. It was for you. Because I knew you wouldn't break, and somebody had to. The screen faded. I dropped the pad and sat in silence. Silas found me the next cycle. He didn't say anything, just stood in the doorway. Then he said, "You did the right thing." "No," I said. "I did the necessary thing." He nodded, and we both knew that was worse. Earthfleet backed off after that. They lost support. The truth had spread too far. Public opinion shifted. Colonies refused orders. Civil unrest forced Earth to pull its fleets back for reassessment. They never apologized, but they stopped trying to kill us, which, in war, is sometimes as close as you get to peace. The Ghost Core was fractured, but not gone. The Maw became a floating archive, orbiting the fringe, housing every file, every recording, every piece of testimony we'd gathered. We didn't strike anymore. We remembered. Because someone had to. Because in a galaxy built on power, lies, and convenience, memory is the last act of defiance. And me? I stayed aboard the Maw. Didn't return to Earth. Didn't retire. Didn't forget. Because forgetting was what got us here in the first place. 10 years later, I barely recognized the stars. The Black Maw still drifted on the outer edge of the Helios belt, where Earth's light was nothing but a whisper, and the rest of the galaxy had moved on without us. The hull creaked more than it used to. Half the panels didn't light. We kept the engines in cold standby. No more war. No more raids. Just silence. I lived alone on the bridge now. A cot in the corner. A desk with an old projector. My ribs ached with every breath. Lungs chewed up from a drylock gas attack I never fully recovered from. The medbay systems kept me alive in pieces. They said I wouldn't make it to 50. Turns out they were right. Silas was gone. Left 3 years ago. Said he couldn't rot in a tomb any longer. Said he wanted to feel gravity again. He didn't ask me to come. I didn't ask him to stay. The others had scattered. Some vanished, some died. Some faded into backwater colonies where nobody asked about the war. And Earth? Earth had rebuilt. The Peace Council renamed itself. Same structure, new title. A fresh coat of paint over the same cracked foundation. They passed resolutions condemning the Vexari betrayal, sanctioned a few officials, and moved on. No war crime tribunals, no reparations, no justice, just mutual healing. The history books called us a tragic footnote. I called it what it was: cowardice. It was on my 49th birthday, if you can call it that in space, that the message came. Encrypted, old format, the kind we used to use before everything fell apart. I thought it was a mistake at first. No one had contacted the Maw in over a year, but the signature matched Earthfleet. I nearly deleted it. Then I saw the name attached. Lara Kess. She was a senator now, one of the few who'd fought to keep the truth of Delcar 9 alive. Back then she was just a communications analyst, just a kid who believed in facts over narratives. I opened the file. The message was short. Riven, I know you don't want contact, but you need to hear this. The Council is rewriting again, not just policy, history. They're preparing to publish the new edition of the Intergalactic Conflict Records. Delcar 9 will be labeled a strategic miscalculation. You, Silas, Wyatt, all of it reduced to a sidebar. They're scrubbing the archives, the original files, the video leaks, the names. They want me to approve it, but I can't stop them alone. I'm asking one last time, let me access the maw. Let me use the archives. We can preserve it. Make sure no one forgets. But I need you to say yes. Please. LK. I stared at that message for hours. My hand hovered over the command key. All it would take was one word. Yes. And the vault would open. Every truth, every scar, every face, given freely to a world that had done everything it could to forget us, to erase me. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to die in silence, surrounded by ghosts who deserved more than another half-baked monument and a digital plaque. But then I remembered Wyatt, his rage, his fear, his desperation to make sure what happened to us never happened again. And I remembered Silas, bleeding in the medbay after a drone strike, whispering through gritted teeth, if the truth dies with us, then so did everything we bled for. And I remembered Dev, the kid, barely 20. All he wanted was for someone to remember his brother. I opened the channel. Access granted. 2 words, and suddenly the black maw was awake again. Lights I hadn't seen in years flickered on. Systems booted. Cooling vents hissed like they were exhaling after a long cry. Lara arrived 2 days later. I met her at the airlock. She was older now, thinner, hair pulled back in a tight braid, eyes sharper than I remembered. She didn't smile when she saw me. She saluted. I didn't return it. I just said, "This place isn't a museum." She nodded. "It's a warning." We walked through the data core together. Thousands of files, footage, logs, testimonies, writings, personal recordings, even the unedited footage from Sindar Station. She saw it all. The war, the betrayal, the collapse, the ghost core. She stood in front of Wyatt's final message and didn't blink once. When it ended, she whispered, "They'll never understand what he did." "Good," I said. "It wasn't for them." We worked in silence for hours. She set up a live relay, secure, hard-coded. No political spin, no edits. The truth would be released one last time. Direct to the colonies, the frontier worlds, the places that hadn't forgotten what war looked like, places where the blood was still fresh. She uploaded it all, and then she turned to me. "There's one more thing," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "They want to offer you a pardon." I laughed. It sounded more like a cough. "They want me to apologize?" She shook her head. "Number. They want you to be a symbol, a redemption arc, the Ghost Corps captain who came back from the cold." I turned away. "They don't get to make a martyr out of me. They think it'll stabilize the narrative." "Of course they do." She stepped closer. "What do you want, Riven?" I looked at her and said the only thing that still mattered. "For the truth to outlive me." She left the next day. Before she did, she left behind a transmitter. One button. If I pressed it, the archive would upload to a secure core in the Terran historical vaults. Permanent, immutable, uneditable. Once it was done, I'd be gone from the story. No interviews, no state funerals, no rebranding. Just a footnote that refused to disappear. I waited a week, stared at the button every day, drank the last of my whiskey, wrote 1 letter, burned 3 others, watched the stars die and be born through the viewing window. Then, one morning, with my hand shaking from cold and age and everything in between, I pressed the button and let the truth go. The transmission took 4 hours. When it was done, a soft ping echoed through the ship. I shut the terminal off, returned to the bridge, laid down in the cot, and let sleep take me. I don't know what they'll say about me. If they say anything at all, maybe they'll call me a relic, maybe a traitor, maybe a stubborn old bastard who never knew when to quit. But somewhere, some kid on a frontier colony will grow up hearing the name Delcar 9. They'll hear about a betrayal that was buried, a vengeance that rose in fire. A man who didn't ask to be a hero, only to be remembered, Captain Ryvan Mace, Ghost Corps, dead at 49, last survivor of a war no one wanted to believe. Final act, truth. Let them lie. Let them bury it all in textbooks and monuments. We lived it. We burned for it. And even if they forget again, the stars remember. And the dead? They never forgive.